Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scriptures for May the 19th. Your readings today found you in 1 Samuel 26, 27, and 28, John chapter 11, verses 1 through 54, Psalm 117, the first two verses, and Proverbs chapter 15, verses 22 and 23. Now, John chapter 11, this is one of those stories that, again, we touched on in our I Am series, in the 7 I Ams, when Jesus tells them that I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection. And so if you want to catch up on that, you can go back and look at our previous sermon series. But we're going to dive into Samuel 26, 27, and 28. Now, we see here the continuing struggle and ongoing relationship of David and Saul, and it's gotten so bad. Interesting. So you're like, well, wait a minute, Jeremy. This dialogue has a little bit of weirdness in it. So, first of all, we see in 26 that David again spares Saul's life. He again doesn't kill him, and Saul relents, and yet David obviously doesn't feel safe. He's seen Saul's deceit. He's seen how Saul reacts to situations, and he knows that at some point soon, Saul is going to change his mind and come again after David. So David goes, and he goes to the people that he has had a huge impact on, but not necessarily in a positive way, at least from their perspective. David goes and lives among the Philistines. This really speaks to David's desperateness of the situation. If he's willing to go to people, remember, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. They weren't talking about just any people. They were pretty much talking about Philistines. Remember what Saul's request was for David's wedding gift? 100 foreskins from Philistines. David is not exactly Mr. Popular in the Philistines, and yet David goes to these people. And so David goes to Achish and goes and hangs out with him. And this is a really strange dynamic because David actually was doing subterfuge. He would go and he would pretend to go raid an Israelite home, his people, and instead he'd go kill a Philistine town and completely make sure that nobody lived so that nobody could tell on him that he had done this. And this would be a really strange relationship where God obviously allowed David to find favor in Achish's life. And so Achish believed him, which is really kind of amazing. At no point did Achish go, I haven't heard from such and such town for a while. I wonder what's going on with them. And come to find out, oh my goodness, they're all dead. How did this happen? He never really seemed to catch on. While this is going on, however, this is a real strong example of how far Saul has fallen, not only in his thoughts, but in his life with God. Saul was never a person that was truly fearful of God. He was always more fearful of others. And so here's an example of, once again, Saul not turning to God for answers, but turning to something else, something very dark, something that God very clearly has said, stay away from. And yet he goes to see the witch, the medium, at Endor. No, this is not a small moon, the moon planet, forest planet of Endor. This is a town of Endor. Yeah, George Lucas stole it. And he goes because Samuel has died. Okay, and he goes to see this woman. And she is going to conjure a spirit. Now, the woman doesn't... Now, this is where the question comes in. Did she actually bring Samuel, or did she bring a demon? I will tell you that theologians kind of battle about this. They fight and they argue about whether or not it's actually Samuel or Saul. My personal opinion is that typically when these women divine up, this witch in this particular divine up, they're bringing in demonic spirits. They're not bringing in spirits that are going to point to God. Yet for some reason, God chooses to allow for this time for Samuel to make an appearance. And the reason why I think it's Samuel is because of what he says. Samuel says, Samuel points to God in this conversation. That's something that a demon would never do. Okay, the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David, because you do not obey the Lord. Saul is falling and he's in great fear, But he's not in fear of God. He's fear of everything else and everyone else. Saul is a man who lives in fear of the populist idea of what everyone else thinks, not the idea of what our God thinks. This is a good warning for us. Are we operating in fear for what God wants for us, or are we operating in fear of what everybody else wants for us? Okay, there's your thought for the day. We'll talk more tomorrow.